Hi, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, often known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. I'm an old dog who's always trying to learn new tricks. That's why in each episode of the SLLN podcast, I'll chat with a school librarian about a lesson, program, or activity they love. Hopefully, this can be a place for school librarians to get ideas and find new ways to engage with their students and staff. Speaking of which, I'd love to hear about what you and your friends are doing in your school library. Email me at drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com to tell me about what you're doing, offer feedback about the SLLN podcast, or to request a podcast sticker. As Amy Herman likes to say, being a guest on a podcast is a great way to show your admins you are engaged in meaningful professional development and leadership in the profession. So drop me a line and let's chat. That being said, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. I just like to geek out about school libraries. So without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Hey everybody, we're back. I have got a favorite guest here, a returning guest here, a 3-time champion, I'm going to say here. It's awesome. I'm so glad. Stacy, thank you so much for coming back. I'm so excited that we're going to get to chat again. Just in case people have not caught up with you previously, why don't you take a second, tell us who you are, where you're at, and what you do.
So, hi everyone. Hi Steve. It's so great to talk to you again. And I guess since this is my 3rd time, this is my hat trick for the podcast.
Love it.
Right? I'm very excited. So, hi everyone. I'm Stacy Gilbert. I am a librarian in Northern Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. My school is grades 7 to 12. So I have all of the teenagers all the time. It's a pretty big school. We have a little over 3,000 students total. And I work on a team of 4 total librarians in one library serving those 3,000 kids.
So lucky.
Right. And my school is highly diverse. It's kind of like we are a microcosm of the entire world in my school building. So
love that.
Yeah, it is a great place to be. And I get paid to hang out with teenagers during the school year, which is the most fun that you can possibly have.
To be fair, you would have to pay me to hang out with teenagers. So I think that's okay. I think that's all right that they're paying you for that.
I mean,
they can be
in fairness, I don't have any kids at home. So yes, they do have to pay me to hang out with teenagers, but it's so great.
Well, for those who missed it, you have been here twice before. This is time 3. You were here for episode 68, Presentation Skills, or How Not to Bore Your Audience to Tears. And you were here for episode 80, Building Cultural Fusion Artifacts, which was also awesome. And we're kind of talking sort of in a similar vein to that, I think, today, building cultural fusion artifacts, except not really, but kind of sort of a little bit. So I'm kind of curious, how did this come about? Like, where did this idea we're going to talk about today sort of germinate?
So I have been doing a lot of advocacy with my world languages department for years now, trying to get them in. And this year, finally, I got some takers, which was great.
Yeah.
So it was, it was kind of the culmination of all of those efforts over the years. And I had gotten our English language learners, whatever your district calls them. For us, they're multilingual learners is the official title.
I like that.
But anyway, so I've gotten some of those classes in, but I never had been able to break into the kind of more general like world languages classes. And so finally got some of the Spanish teachers on board. So Spanish 2 came in with their 10th graders for that cultural fusion kind of idea. And then towards the end of the year, one of my middle school Spanish teachers said, hey, I got an idea. And I love those conversations. Those are the best, right?
They are the best. I love that you never know where they're going to go, but no matter where they go, you're going to get some kind of new idea going. So it's never a waste of time. It's always an excellent opportunity to kind of like just send your mind in a new direction. So I love that you're having that conversation.
Exactly. Like those brainstorm conversations of just, let's spit some things out and see what happens. I love those. Those are amazing. And so that's pretty much what happened. But, I've been trying to get this teacher in, like I said, for years. And my district does a thing for middle schoolers where as a middle schooler, you can take a world language class for high school credit, like for graduation.
Oh, okay.
Right. So My district well, actually my state, really, for graduation, you have to have, or the students have to have 3 years in the same language
Okay.
or 2 years in 2 different languages.
Okay.
So you could take Spanish 1 and 2 and French 1 and 2 if you wanted to.
Gotcha. Okay. And that
Um,
seems pretty similar. I'm guessing that's a pretty common thing all over the place. Because I remember when I was in high school, we had basically the same requirement. So that's interesting to see that that is not only still here, but is prevalent, because I was not in Virginia at the time.
right? So the opportunity the kids have to take it in middle school really helps them out for their eventual high school schedules, right? You can get some of those credits out of the way.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah.
But
it's also a good chance to kind of just sample things too, I imagine, because, maybe you think that you want to learn Spanish and you get into it and you're like, no, this is not for me. And now you've still got time to sort of get into another language without having to necessarily stay on that same track. But like opportunities, I love that your school is giving opportunities here with this.
Absolutely. And it's really nice, since we are a middle school and high school together, that the students can take high school classes very easily. It's not as if they have to go to another campus. They literally just go one hallway over.
Nice.
So it works out really well. But anyway, so the students have the opportunity to take those classes. But if you are a middle schooler, you even get kind of an additional option, which is you can take the first year of the language broken into 2 years.
Interesting.
So, for example, for Spanish 1, if you wanted to get that out of the way in middle school, but you were worried about, how are you going to do learning a language? You've never, tried to add a language to your repertoire before, and that concerns you. Or there's other things in your schedule that you're worried about overloading yourself or something like that. Then you can take Spanish 1 broken up over 7th grade and 8th grade.
Interesting. So it's almost like a Spanish 1A and Spanish 1B sort of a thing. Huh.
Exactly. They're usually called Part 1 and Part 2.
Sure.
But yeah, it's basically they cut the curriculum in half, so you get to go like twice as half the speed, right?
Right. And so I don't know if you're going to know this answer, but I'm curious. Do you know if in doing that, is it just that the classes are half speed basically, or is it that I don't know if you guys have like a rotation schedule where like they take Spanish one day and art another day. And so it kind of like flip flops back and forth instead of having Spanish every day or something like that?
We're on the block schedule, so it is kind of a, even day, odd day situation.
Okay.
But that's true of all of the classes. The students have 4 classes one day, and then the next day they have 4 different classes.
Gotcha. Okay.
But
so it's more the case that they are just sort of taking it at a nice, gentle lope instead of a gallop as they are going through their Spanish introduction.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it allows for a lot more flexibility for those teachers, right? Because there's not the pressure that you have to be, at the end of your curriculum necessarily at the end of year 1. Right. Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
And as you're finishing part 2, you've had a lot of time with these students. So you can put in some more kind of inquiry-based projects. You can explore some different topics that maybe you would have time for in the 1-year-long version.
I love that. We have gotten to this point, I feel like, in education, just across the board, that we've trying to pack so much stuff into, and the days are not getting longer. So like we're just giving the kids more and more and more to do. And so I love that this is an opportunity to kind of slow down, take a breath, draw it out a little bit. Cause I mean, we know, like the research shows us, the longer you take to take in information, the more it's going to stick in your brain. So this just makes a lot of sense to me that they are doing this, especially with a new language that these kids are going to try and acquire. Nice. Okay. I love this. I mean, I love your Spanish program. We can stop there, but I think there's more. So
there is, because none of those decisions had anything to do with me. But I do agree. And I think it really helps the kids have a solid foundation in the language before they move to the high school side, where now suddenly you're taking, some much more difficult classes, all for graduation, credit and all of those things. So I think it really does help them have a good basis and a solid foundation in the language.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, so it was the teacher for part 1 and part 2 is the one who finally kind of acquiesced to all of my persuasions. And she had just kind of randomly taken this class. It wasn't a for credit class. I think it was mostly, for her own enjoyment kind of class,
Okay.
but it was about art and art history.
Hmm.
And so it got her thinking about Hispanic art for her like Spanish class.
Love it.
And so she said she wanted to do a kind of survey, a little mini survey of art history and a concentration on Hispanic artists,
Huh.
like kind of up throughout the world, right? In
That's
all the
cool.
Hispanic countries. And
Huh.
so we kind of spitballed and kind of went back and forth. And I have a history background. I have a more than average, I would say, background in art history specifically.
Okay.
I was like, all right, yeah, I never get to talk about, like what's the differences between Baroque art and neoclassic art and, that kind of stuff and mannerism versus Impressionism. So that was really fun because it's stuff that I
I need to
really
take your
love.
class because I do not know these things. So, but
Well,
that's cool.
fun fact, the wife and I literally spent yesterday at the art museum and, and like around every corner. I really, no, you have to understand this piece. It's really important. And, and she said that when we walked in the building, I should have started with, and class is in session.
See, my wife has taken some art classes at some point, but back in college. It's been a long time. I've never taken any art class whatsoever. And we both love to go to DC. We both love to check out the museums. And our thing has become finding the weirdest depictions of animals especially in like medieval art, just finding how like they didn't know what, these people who had never seen a lion are trying to paint based on a description, and it looks like some sort of like pug that has been through a wash and has some sort of weird wig stapled to its head. Like it's just that's the extent of my art knowledge. So you are absolutely head and shoulders above where I'm coming in here, but this is awesome. And I love too that that was one thing when I was an English teacher, so many things just that I would come across in my daily life that I would be listening to a podcast. I'd be taking a class. I'd be talking to somebody that's not an educator, and something would just kind of click in my head like, oh, that might be kind of a neat way to bring something that we've talked about in class into the discussion, or like open up the discussion in a new direction. And it's so easy. Another thing that I kind of feel like we have done in modern education that kind of is not the best for our students is we've gotten so siloed in every single thing. And when we get those cross-disciplinary opportunities, it's great. But so often that requires connecting with an educator in a different subject. And when we can be the ones who are bringing that cross-disciplinary idea into the room, when we're already the subject area masters and we can bring in that and this other thing I find cool, A, it gives us that extra hook for the students, but B, I think it's so great for the students to see that we have other interests, other information, other things that we like to explore in our worlds other than just Spanish or English or math. So I love that your Spanish teacher is very open to this idea of, here's something cool. Let me see how I can incorporate that with my students. Sorry, I have just been thinking these thoughts recently about how education is set up. And as we are talking this through, so much of it is occurring to me that like, wow, there's so many things we can do that make it so much better for our students. And we have almost set the system up in a way that makes it harder for us to make things better for our students. But that's a whole other kettle of fish. Let's come back around and I will shut up so that you can tell us about the interesting thing you're doing, which is you and your Spanish teacher have gotten together and started thinking this through. So once you've had this conversation, like how are things going from that?
So I was concerned that it's like, okay, this is the first time this teacher has, wanted to collaborate. And she said, I was thinking something for the Makerspace. And why I was concerned was that a lot of teachers have this initial assumption about the Makerspace that it is an arts and crafts room, right?
Okay.
That it is a supply closet, right? All
I
of
can
those
see
things.
that. Yeah.
And so I was worried about, okay, in what way do you want to use the Makerspace, right? And so through our conversations, what we kind of landed on was after students do kind of this exploration and mini research on like Hispanic art throughout these different eras, then they get it branched. So they got a choice. In the Makerspace, they were able to either choose to remix one of the artworks that they had found and studied, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I did a whole mini lesson on remixing artworks and showed how different artists have done that. We looked at, what was it? Botero remix a painting. Oh, and right now I'm not going to be able to remember the name of the artist, but the name of the art is Las Meninas.
Okay.
And it's a very famous painting with a princess, and basically her attendants are, fluttering around her. And you see the artist in the mirror, that he's about to paint her. And it's this very kind of like royal portrait kind of painting. And a couple of 100 years later, Botero was like, I want to do my version. And it's a completely different style. And but you can very clearly see the parallels. So did this whole mini lesson about, finding those parallels. What do you notice between these two pieces of art? All those things. So they had the chance to do something similar for another piece of art, right? Pick some art piece and they could choose. It could be a sculpture. It could be a painting. It could be, we did digital collage. We did. So there was a whole bunch of different kind of media that they could choose. They had to take their own spin on it using the materials in the Makerspace.
Okay.
Or their other option B, was they could build their own museum exhibit. And that ended up being what most of the students chose, which actually shocked both of us. She thought more kids were going to pick the remix option, and I thought it was going to be more 50-50. And more kids picked the museum exhibit, and it was use cardboard and build a room. Some students did 2 rooms that adjoined and fill it with art. So we have a color printer in the library. It's the only one that is available to students in the building. And so they had to choose their top 3 to 5 paintings that they believed, they had to curate their exhibit, right? Of all of the art that you have studied. Now, what are the most crucial pieces to explain Hispanic art through the ages? And so they printed out little, versions of those artworks and put them in their museum exhibit, what order they thought they should go and all of those things. And no matter which option they chose, they then had to do a writing piece in Spanish explaining either, the art piece that they remixed or explaining their exhibit and why they chose the pieces that they chose. And so for both, like it was different critical thinking skills, but all still critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
And some really good evaluating and what are you going to choose and why? Whether that's what are you going to remix or what are you going to put in your museum?
Yeah.
That it was some really fun conversations.
Boy, man, I'm kind of, my brain keeps coming back to that idea of which one the students would be more likely to pick. And I feel like I agree that I agree with your Spanish teacher that on first glance, I would think the remix, but thinking it through, I can kind of see the student drifting into create your own exhibit in a way, in that it is still going to require them to do some deeper thought. They're both going to require some deeper thought. But I think on the surface level, I can see in my school, my students going, oh, I get to just pick a couple of things and then put them in. Great. I can pick a couple of things and I don't have to create a new piece of art, which is a little bit of a shame. And I hope that I'm wrong about that my students would want to do more remixing, but I can kind of see it looking like this is maybe an easier option. Although the curation element of it, so clever, because you've really got to give some thought to why are you picking what you're picking out of so many options that are available to them. So, yeah, that is a little bit of a head scratcher there.
Yeah, right. And I think, maybe there was some, at first glance, like, oh, I think that'll be easier. But the building the museum was a lot harder and it took a lot longer, right? Rather than making their own art piece. So
were there any particular requirements for what the museum had to look like, what their exhibit had to look like, other than having 3 to 5 pieces of art and a later explanation of why? Were there construction guidelines or limits, or, did they have to have, in addition to the art in museums, a lot of times there's a plaque or something that explains? I'm just kind of curious, what their general blueprint was as they were going into this.
What's hilarious is we gave them no requirements. It was,
okay.
build a museum. And so how the students took that and, some students made it 2 floors and put in stairs,
Wow.
right? Some students did multiple rooms on one level and did doors, that led from one to another. Some did just one huge room, and that was okay too.
Mm-hmm.
And we were also thinking about the placards, and that's what the write-up that they had to do, because, it would end up too tiny in the little room.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But it was really entertaining to watch. I mean, all I had was flat cardboard, and watching them puzzle through, how do I make a room? I had flat cardboard and hot glue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So watching them puzzle it through and then realize, wait, I can bend cardboard, right? and you would think, I don't know, I think most of us grown-ups would like to believe that by the time students are 13 to 14 years old, that they have some basic gross motor skills, right? Like the big ones.
Yeah.
But they're middle schoolers, so of course they don't, or at least they are, they're going through transition, shall we say.
Yes,
So,
that's a nice way to put that. I was going to say they're spasms, but...
There we go. That too. I heard someone refer to middle schoolers as bags of goo, which I don't disagree. They're talking about, when caterpillars become butterflies, and basically the caterpillars have to become a sack of goo before they can transform. Yep. And like middle schoolers are just sacks of goo. I was like,
they really are.
They are.
In multiple ways.
Yes, I love them, but they're sacks of goo. That's okay. But yeah, we would love to think that our students have some of these hands-on skills, but how many opportunities have they really had? And how many opportunities has everyone had? Right? Not just the one-off kid whose mom is, like selling her scrapbooks on Etsy or something. You know what I mean? But generically, like across the board, how many opportunities have they really had to, here is a building material, go.
Yeah.
And that I think is pretty rare, especially with our, if we're talking about middle schoolers, they are the beginning of Gen Alpha. So, at Gen Alpha, how many opportunities have they had? These are the kids that were in early elementary when COVID hit. So they probably, got cut down a lot of their hands-on time. They got whatever toys they had at home, right?
Yeah.
And if they didn't have Legos at home, or if they didn't have Lincoln Logs, or whatever, then they really didn't have a lot of opportunities. So watching the kids puzzle through how to use a hot glue gun, because they had no idea. We really had to help them. Like, they kept coming up like, it doesn't work. Like, sweetie, you need to put a new glue stick in the back.
To be fair, I've done that. I have spent time trying to figure out why my glue gun was jammed when it was that I forgot to put another glue stick in. So I'm going to have some grace for that child.
And yes, same. And absolutely. But no, the number that really, and then we had to show them how the stick goes in. And there was one kid who was like jamming it. Like, oh my God, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he was like, it won't go in all the way. And he didn't understand that the rest of the old glue stick was still there. You just had to put one in the back to keep the train moving. And it's like, oh, you poor sweet little thing. You have no idea. But yeah, I mean, it's just some of those, pretty kind of basic mechanical things that, a lot of kids haven't had an opportunity to really experience. So them puzzling through that part was just as difficult as trying to remix their own art.
Absolutely. Well, and that's what I was going to say. Like, I think it's really behooves us as educators, if we're going to have kids do something that we do not know for a fact that they have done multiple times before, we should really plan on taking the time to walk them step by step through, even though it may seem super basic to us and like, yeah, you should absolutely have the skill by now. That's not the case for so many of our students. And it's so fascinating to me to see. I work with middle schoolers on a regular basis, and to see what skills they have and don't have is always just, even from year to year, it can change so much. But there are so many things that the teachers in my building just assume our students know. And I see them in the library trying to puzzle through, and I'm like, we got to take a couple of steps backwards here so that we can get some foundation in before we can build this project. So
absolutely.
And finding, again, the time issue of, do we have enough time to help them get those skills? And we should, but we don't always. So I love that this is something that because of the way this class is scheduled generally, you've got that time, you've got that ability to kind of work with the students in this way. And just a cool idea, but awesome that you are walking them through. And I can imagine seeing them try to construct, especially with hot glue, which a lot of them probably haven't used before. Probably a lot of ouches going on in that first class, I would imagine.
And I do give them the speech about how there are tools in there that can and will hurt them. And they need to be careful, and the hot glue guns are hot. Not to touch the little metal piece. I also have low temperature hot glue guns to try to, I don't have any of the high temperature ones in the Makerspace specifically for that reason. I mean, low temp is still very hot, but high temp is a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that because I've got a hot glue gun in the space that I use, and it's a switchable between high and low. I just always leave it on high because I'm like impatient. I never thought about the fact that we could get some different temperatures for the students. Putting that one away in the vault. Okay.
Really, a great source is either the dollar store, or if you can get Michael's, every once in a while they'll run sales on their mini low temp hot glue guns.
Okay.
And they're only, I think at Michael's they end up being just a couple of dollars.
Okay.
But anyway, so you can get them really cheap. And that is how I have outfitted my Makerspace with hot glue guns.
Okay.
Because, like I said, they're the mini and low temp. And so that means they're cheaper because they're cheaper to make. And they do everything they need to. It is enough hot for the students to make whatever.
Gotcha.
But yeah, the number of students who at first grabbed just regular glue sticks, just like purple Elmer's glue, you know what I mean? To try to put together 2 pieces of cardboard. Like, no, children. Okay, let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Is this
the
working
number
for you?
of students that I see using Scotch tape to put things together that I'm like, no, Scotch tape, that's not going to work. And they look at me like, what are you talking about? It's tape. I'm like, no, come bring it to me.
Right? But, absolutely. And so it's really entertaining to watch them puzzle through it. But I mean, it's so much about the Makerspace is about an equity of access, right? Giving as many students as possible these opportunities to puzzle, to tinker, to poke and see like, oh, wait, actually, maybe tape isn't great for things that need to not move or that are heavy or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice to be able to provide some of that access and some of that opportunity.
Yeah. So that has me sort of backtracking. So we're talking about how they were building their own museum spaces, and they're also able to remix art. And I'm kind of curious, when they were remixing, was that also like physically making art? Were they digitally making art? How did that what was their process for when they were remixing?
They got to choose. So it depended on what form of art they chose to remix.
Okay.
So we purposefully found and highlighted different art mediums. So we showed them some sculptures, we showed them some paintings, we showed them some digital art, we showed them illustration.
Okay.
And so then when they got to remix, they got to choose, well, okay, so if you're remixing a painting, you could keep that in the same vein. Now, I do not have paint in my Makerspace, which the students are always, what do you mean? Like, grab a marker. I just, no paint. Like, have you seen the floor right now? I'm not adding paint to this. But, they could keep in the same medium of whatever they chose, or they could choose to mix it up, right? Like, the part of their remix could have been, I'm going to take this sculpture and turn it into a drawing, or I'm going to take this sculpture and do a digital illustration of it. So there were some students working in Canva.
Gotcha.
And doing some kind of digital collage that way, using elements from Canva. There were also ones that were using the kind of shape tools in Canva to make some illustrations.
Okay.
But also we had quite a few that chose the sculpture because I have like air dry clay.
Okay.
You can make like one student made this little bird and he's very cute. So I held on to him because he's just so cute. And, of course I have plenty of paper and, markers and colored pencils and those kinds of things for students who wanted to go the drawing route.
Gotcha.
So it was completely up to them. How they remixed it was up to them.
I'm curious, you said that there weren't a ton of students that did remixes, but of the ones that did remixes, it sounds like they used a bunch of different materials and went in different directions with how they were going to decide on a medium. What would you say is ballpark the percentage of how many did digital versus how many did physical remixes?
So of the students who did remixes, I would say probably 2/3 did something physical and a third did digital, which also surprised me. Because usually, if you give the students like, hey, you can do this in Canva, they're like, okay, right? Like, they're there. They'll found it on Canva. But I think there was, well, part of it is it was the examples that we gave them for remixing, right? Like that, the illustrator that we highlighted, I mean, his work is amazing, and it's these very bold, solid shapes for his illustrations. You may have seen he does some illustration for children's books where it's like children's faces, but they have very defined pink circles for their cheeks.
Okay.
And right now, why can I not remember a single artist's name as we're recording?
But I can definitely picture that style. Like I know what you're talking about in terms of what that's going to look like, but that's interesting. So
exactly. So I think, so the idea of like, well, remix this, I think some of the students honestly kind of struggled with, well, I'm not if I remix that, what would that even look like? So, but they have more of a concept of what could I draw?
I gotcha.
Or what could I, build? What could I sculpt?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why roughly 2/3-ish went that route.
Gotcha.
And the digital collage option, which was the other, hey, you could do this in Canva. The example, the artist, it was some great stuff, but it was very surrealistic. It was very like, it's a guy with a fish head sitting at a desk and like a shrimp is floating by, like it's very kind of bizarre things, which, as a middle schooler, there's, there is an element who kind of latch on to that bizarre. And there are plenty. They're like, I don't know, that's weird. I'm just going to draw a fish, that kind of thing.
Interesting. Okay. I love this. I love that they're, that you've given them pretty much a blank canvas, if I can make an art pun here, but you've given them so many options for how they can express what they have learned, which is interesting. Because, I mean, anytime we can give them options and choice, gives them agency, gives them voice in the project, that's great. And I love that this is within, like, you've given them multiple branches that they can pursue, and within each branch, there's so many ways that they can go about it. Like it's not going to be a series of cookie cutter things that are like, oh, yours compared to this one, it's going to be very unique and very student specific, which I love.
Exactly. And that's part of what I try to steer the teachers toward in the Makerspace, and for lots of different reasons. Of course, student choice and, ownership and all of those things. Also, it helps spread out my materials. So that way I don't have, this teacher brought in all 5 of her classes. So, we're talking about 100 kids. Well, no, 150-ish kids.
Yeah.
If every single kid built a museum, they would have wiped me out of cardboard probably before all the classes came through.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So giving that flexibility lets, all of my materials to kind of dwindle at a similar pace. And I also try to balance, when someone comes in with an idea like, hey, I was thinking for the Makerspace, in my head, I'm doing the calculus of what recent projects have I done? What materials have gotten hit really hard so far? Maybe what could we,
what can we substitute? How can we maybe spin this in a different direction to make sure that we've got what you need? Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Because, it is not school funded. So, I gotta make it work out how it works, right? So, but I like that maximum flexibility, for that, just on the logistical side of materials, but also, when do students have the opportunity to be creative and, fully creative, not just you get to choose the red or the blue.
Right.
But no, you need to show that you know something about Hispanic culture through art. Go,
Yeah. That is a very broad mandate. And I love that you're giving them so many possibilities and so many options for how they can pursue that. It's really clever.
I mean, it was really fun, and the variety of projects was amazing. And I mean, the kids always, well, surprise me and impress me with what they can come up with. I think sometimes as educators, we kind of go to worst case scenario of the kids are going to take the easiest way out and they're not going to do it, and they're not. So like, I need to define it, and I need to, I need to I need something enforceable.
Yeah,
Basically.
we've got to be the rules lawyers who have thought through every possible objection and, what excuse are they going to have, and close it all off ahead of time. I absolutely come from that mental space after 20 something years in the English classroom. So I totally get what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. But I love that in the Makerspace, it's an opportunity to not have to be that because the engagement is baked in. So are there kids who slap something together and of course, it doesn't matter what you do, there's going to be, that element or, those who take that route. But it's an opportunity for the vast majority of kids to have that engagement already embedded in that they, it's connected to something they want to do because they chose it, and get them some of those soft skills that they rarely get to stretch.
Absolutely. And also, I think there's really an element that we often leave out, which is just the enjoyment that students can get out of doing something that's different than what they're used to. And especially for I've had, as an English teacher for many years, I had tons of students who would come in and be like, I can't write, I can't read. But when I gave them other projects that they could work on, now they've got something that they feel like that they can, really show off their skills with. And it's that alone, I think, is valuable. But the element of just there's fun to be had in building and in creating. And I feel like a lot of the fun of putting words on a page or of reading and enjoying something, again, kind of gets beaten out of our students and beaten out of us as educators because we have to hit certain marks by certain points in the year. And so we don't have the time to just enjoy so much. And this is that opportunity to do something a little different and just enjoy doing something and take pleasure and take pride in here's a thing that I did. Let me show you this thing that I did. That's not going to be like anybody else's. It's not going to be 5 sentences like this person's paragraph. And it's not going to be 5 paragraphs. This is my own thing. And it's a real rare opportunity, I feel like, for students to be able to kind of have that individual expression in learning opportunity,
Absolutely. I mean, what, you mean learning's supposed to be fun?
Yeah.
What is that?
My very first job interview, I went in and I sat down and I was talking to this principal at a school, and he was very on board with everything I was saying. He said, so what's something you really believe about education? I said, I think it's possible for students to have fun in the classroom. And his face shut down and he said, oh, okay, thank you very much. And I never got a call back. And that was it. Did not believe that learning should be fun. And I just ever since then, it has been forefront in my mind that if it's not fun, we are automatically, there's absolutely parts that are not going to be fun. There's parts of learning that you just kind of have to slog through. And that's part of the learning process. And I get that. I understand that. I believe in it. But that doesn't mean that every part of learning should be a slog. There's times and places, and there definitely should be some fun elements when we can work them in. And this sounds like an awesome fun element.
Well, thank you. Yeah, what we're trying to do is build lifelong learners.
Yes.
Right? We're trying to build humans who are curious and willing to learn new things throughout their lives. So why on earth would we not try to make that an enjoyable experience?
Absolutely.
Overall, right?
Yeah.
To try to, associate some positive experiences in it so that they don't think about learning new things. That sucks,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love that your Spanish teacher is modeling this by saying, went and I learned about this art stuff, and I am bringing this interesting thing that I learned about to you so I can share this interest with you. And that's modeling lifelong learning, modeling how there's crossover between all the stuff we do, and just kind of helping our students get something a little bit different. It's just a great blend of all these different elements. Love it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so did you say this was the first year you did this?
Yes.
Okay. So is this something that you see happening again? Based on what kind of feedback did you get from the teacher as you guys were working through this?
The teacher really loved it.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that we can, make it an annual thing. I did not love what time of year she decided to do it because this was right at the end of the year. I was like, really? Okay, here we go. Maybe I can convince her to do it earlier in the year next year. But yeah, I am hopeful that it will become a more perennial favorite.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. Man, well, this is awesome. I'm so glad you came and shared this. And I can't wait to start talking to my not my ELLs, my foreign language teachers, my world language teachers. I'll get the right phrase in there somewhere. But I think we are at the point we're going to take our 90-degree turn and go into our book break.
Book break. Squiddy.
What have you got on your reading radar these days?
Well, okay, to be perfectly honest, I just finished a memoir, an adult memoir. I read an adult book, Steve.
Ooh.
I know, right? It is hilarious when teachers, it's very cute when they're doing their own reading. And so it's like, oh, have you read such and such? It's so good. And they're always reading adult books. And I'm like, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't read grown-up books. But anyway, so I actually read a grown-up book.
Nice. Congratulations.
Right. So if anyone is interested in a grown-up book, I read Leslie Jones' memoir, and it was very good. So highly recommend that.
Okay.
But there is a lot of cursing for anyone who maybe is more sensitive to that or would prefer not to. Just know that going into it.
Okay.
Including in the title. So
okay. Good to know.
But for the kid book side, I really loved the new middle school book by Dan Gemeinhart, and I'm probably saying his last name wrong, but he did Coyote Sunrise. I want to say he did Scar Island, but I could be making that. But anyway, so he's kind of a master of middle school books. I mean, his stuff is just beautiful. So all that to say, fangirling aside, the book is called Busted.
Okay.
And it is about a kid who lives with his grandpa, but grandpa lives in an assisted living community, like a retirement community.
Okay.
So the kid lives in this retirement home. And so he talks about how he has 100 grandparents, basically.
Huh.
And he plays pinochle with them, and he, helps with the knitting club and, all of these things. And then he gets the bad news that rents are going up. And so he and grandpa might not be able to afford to stay. They may have to find a different place to live. And he is just distraught over this. Well, at the same time, everyone's getting this news that the rents are going up. One of the residents is grumpy and no one wants to talk to him. Everyone says he's bad news. And he kind of ropes the kid in to this almost like road trip. Let's sneak out of the retirement home and help me find this thing. I have to find this thing. Come with me. And if you do, I will give you reward money, basically.
Okay.
And we find out that he is an ex-gangster in the mob. And so he has some money hidden. So if the kid helps him break out of the retirement home, then he'll get the money he needs for him and grandpa to stay in their home. So it is kind of a madcap road trip story of just, bouncing around, and this guy, trying to find the money that he has squirreled away somewhere. But is it really squirreled away? Or what is his real purpose? And was he really in the mob? So it's a really fun story. My only complaint is that it's a little slow going because it starts off with them just living in the retirement home.
Okay.
So,
which is probably not super thrilling for our middle graders. Living in a retirement home is probably not full of action, adventure, and crazy conflicts.
Exactly. So they got to get through the first, I would say, 10 to 20 pages of establishing these characters, and then just all hell breaks loose, and it's great.
Nice. Okay. I love that. I have to definitely add that to my list. Man, it's funny. I have Coyote Sunrise. I know it's been on about 1 million different lists and awards, and it's in my library, and I look at it pretty much every time I walk through the library, and I'm like, I should really read that someday. So now that also has to move up my list. So now I got 2 books to add to my TBR.
Yes, read. Okay, listeners, if you haven't read Coyote Sunrise, read it. It is so beautifully done. And some of his prose is just beautiful. So yes, highly, highly recommend. All
right. Awesome. Great. Book recs achieved. I love it. We've got a great idea here for getting our world language students doing something a little different. This is great. Thank you so much for coming back, repeating, and bringing us awesome stuff once again. And hopefully we'll be hearing from you again soon. For the folks who haven't had the chance yet, where should they find you online? Where should they go looking to make sure that they can get all the awesome Stacy Gilbertness that they need in their lives?
I don't know. That sounds like maybe a disease you need to see a doctor for. But if you want to reach out to me, I am on Blue Sky at Mama Gilbs, MAMA Gilbs. Or you can feel free to email me. I am on Gmail at Mama Gilbs Library.
Love it.
So either way, reach out to me with questions, ideas, whatever. I am available.
And she's awesome. So definitely make sure you take advantage of her kind offer here, folks. Thank you again for being here. I'm so glad you could make it and so glad we got to have this convo.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break titles. I'd love to hear from you. If you have feedback, a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. That's drtlovesbooks@gmail.com. Know a librarian with something we could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.